get to the point where we talk about what you and your people are doing and where you're injecting value in this entire process.
So the factoring problem is, and this is RSA and ECC. This is what the internet was built on, was factoring large numbers. That's the security that keeps your data safe. However, there's a problem with that, and the problem is that Peter Shor, who was a mathematician, wrote a set of algorithms that proved a quantum computer will break that when they're powerful enough. And don't believe what you read in the normal press. And this is why we're really standing on every soapbox we could stand on, and yelling as loud as we can. That people are saying, well, how many qubits does it take to crack RSA 2048? Well, the answer is about 4,100. So 2n plus 3, 2 times the key length plus 3. Now that's a lot of qubits. Got it. But what people don't understand is people are finding workarounds to that now. For instance, we're reading that in some nation states, what they're doing is they're able to entangle multiple quantum computers. So if you take 14 quantum computers that have 300 qubits, and you can entangle all those together and run one process, you just accessed all that data. So this is why I want to make sure people understand this is not something that they should take lightly, and just because people are saying, oh, it's 10 years away before we have a 4,100 qubit quantum computer. Yeah, but we'll have 300 qubit quantum computers here in a couple of years. And by the way, if you can entangle those and you can run that process, that means you just broke Shor's, or you use Shor's to break RSA. And that means you can take any of the data that you may have stolen or harvested. It's encrypted now, but you can decrypt it. And if that data has a life cycle, or it has useful life of 25, 50, 75 years, think of banking information, military secrets, healthcare information. Most data has to have longevity. That means that data is going to be valuable. And nation states have listening devices all over the world. They're just snarfing in data. They're taking data in. And when they could crack that data, it's game over. And this is why we have to get quantum computing or post-quantum cybersecurity in place right now. If we don't get it in place now, number one, any data that gets stolen today is going to be at risk. And people say, well, our data is safe. We do a lot of security. Well, everybody's data gets stolen. It's a fact. It just gets stolen. In fact, this conversation is over the open internet. It's encrypted right now, but this could easily be decrypted in the same sense. So what we have to do is we have to take this new technology, post-quantum algorithms, and we have to start putting those in place in the networks to secure communications and data. That's where QSecure comes in. That's what we do. Is we start looking at that, saying, okay, we're going to apply post-quantum algorithms, and we're going to start putting those algorithms in place. And Alex, these algorithms are new. So think in terms of factoring is that long number, and you're just finding two things that multiply and do it. Quantum is really good at that. The new algorithms use things called lattice-based infrastructure, for instance. So what that is hard to fathom. 400 dimensions, and they hide the key somewhere in 400 dimensions. Now that's mathematical. We don't even know what that is as humans, right? We 3 dimensions is enough for us. 400. And so what happens is even a quantum computer runs up against problems with that. And so this is what NIST has approved. One of the algorithms called Kyber, which we've actually standardized on all of them. We use all the algorithms that NIST has because we felt that we don't know which ones can be broken and not, so we wanted to get them all. With this, now, if you take your data and your communications and you secure them with this post-quantum algorithm, then even if they get stolen, they're going to have decades of resilience. And that's really the key, is that you need to have the resilience. It's not about stopping. No one can really stop every single hack, but you can have resilience where that data cannot be cracked. So first thing is secure communications, which we do. We put post-quantum in to take those communications line and say, now they're quantum channels. They're not standard RSA anymore. And then secondly, work on the data and the data at rest.
Well, that's all really promising. I mean, Skip, I've heard about some of this, and I've also heard, stuff about using the entanglement itself as a means of detecting intrusion. And there's a lot of promise out there, and we're slowly groping towards the hardware realities that are supporting it.
And what you mentioned, Alice, is quantum key distribution called QKD. That's another way to use quantum. And it's really, it's really a great way. It's still theoretical, though, and it's very point to point because you have to have big pieces of hardware at each end. What you do is you take a single subatomic particle, or two subatomic particles, and you create a relationship. So they actually think they're one. And this is what really freaked Einstein out. He never bought into entanglement. He always said no. He called it spooky action at a distance. He said you can't have that. But they've proven this works. So get this. Entanglement is one of my favorite subatomic properties. But once you take those two subatomic particles, they actually think they're one. You could separate those by a universe. Okay, think of that distance, thousands, millions of light years. And you can charge this particle, reverse spin on this, and that one out across the universe will reverse spin immediately. So it cuts a tunnel through space-time. In other words, you're not waiting light years for light to travel, right? At whatever it is, 262,000 miles a second or something. It automatically would reverse spin. And so what that does, though, for security is because when you entangle those two particles and now they're separated, they think they're one. Anybody that eavesdrops in that line kills the line because those two particles, so you're not one of us. So we're just going to dissolve. And in other words, it's like remember the wave particle duality. The moment that you observe that wave, it turns into a particle. Same thing here. Once that eavesdropper observes that communications channel, it breaks. So again, a fantastic property will be used for things like teleportation of objects and things way down the road. But at this point, still theoretical, very hard to implement because you have to have only point-to-point. Where at QSecure, what we do is we are able to put our post-quantum cyber software. We can go out to all devices. So we can be out on IoT, we can be on servers, laptops, satellites, phones. We can go across a lot. And so this is where you got to think about how do you scale to secure your enterprise. By the way, it's better cryptography anyway. So it's a nice upgrade to move out into the new space. But right now, the White House State Department has issued 2 memos that all federal has to start the upgrade process. So we're into it. This is no longer a matter of if, this is when, because the federal agencies are now mandated to start upgrading. So it's again, people think, well, it's a ways away, but NIST, the NSA, others, a lot of the DoD said, we're not waiting. We're going to start, because it's going to take 10 years to upgrade some of these networks anyway. That's why you can't wait. You don't want to wait until it's too late. You want to start now, start exploring it.
I agree completely. But I'll be happy if I just get an Ansible out of it myself. But there's so much potential out there. So now, beyond these algorithms, are there any other services that you provide, or are you working towards, or other tool sets that you're developing?
Yeah, so we really are developing an orchestration layer. So we're taking those NIST algorithms that NIST approved on July 5th, just recently. And by the way, just to show you the importance of this, when we started this exercise about 3.5 years ago, NIST said they were going to approve the algorithms in 2026. And then they said 2025. And then they said 2024. And then they said, we heard earlier in the year, 2023. And then all of a sudden, it might have been around April or May, they said, we're dropping these algorithms on July 5. There's a reason for that, Alex. They're not doing that just because it's fun. They're pulling it back in because they know what's really going on out there. In the intelligence community, like we have people that have clearances on our teams, and I'm not cleared, so I can't even know what they know, but there are nation states that are investing tens of billions of dollars in a quantum computer just to crack RSA. These nation states have gathered all this data. Some say as much as 25 or 30% of the world's data. They're just waiting to decrypt it. And they're investing. They've got, upwards of 1,800 PhD scientists, quantum computing experts, more than we have in the entire US on one project. So this is, that laser focus is no joke. And we are not taking this lightly. So we've got to start this upgrade process. So we do orchestration. We take this quantum security and we can roll it out across the enterprise. So we can go again to any devices that have enough compute power, and up to and including satellites, by the way. We can upgrade a satellite without putting hardware up there, which, we have a lot of our satellite infrastructure that's exposed as well. Some of it's been up there for a decade or better. But you want to be able to push this out, create quantum channels everywhere so that if people are trying to break in, they can't break in, they can't listen in because everything's quantum encrypted, and then start working on the data. And we had to work on backwards compatibility. We had to make sure that we could go into an enterprise and not force an upgrade. We can still work with things like TLS that they have now, And then we have a proxy that actually translates back and forth. So they can have quantum channels in the areas they need them right away, and then they can start the process later. But we just say, look, just start looking at this and start testing. You've got to start getting into this as an enterprise or federal agency. Just start figuring it out. You don't, again, not asking you to do anything except begin the testing, the pilots, work in sandbox environments off to the side. Doesn't matter, but just start working with it so you're familiar with it. And then when the time comes to upgrade, you'll have some experience. You don't want to start that in 2 or 3 years. You just don't.
Agree with you completely, Skip. Now, we're unfortunately pretty much out of time, but before I let you go, do you have any final thoughts for our audience on the subject?
Yeah, I would say just start looking into it. Explore post-quantum cybersecurity, explore quantum computing, understand why they're a threat. And these machines could change the course of humanity. I mean, this is a big, big deal. So much promise. I mean, amazing promise. These machines will be able to do so much more than our standard compute platforms have done. They won't displace them. We're still going to need our compute platforms to do certain things. But when it comes to multivariate problems, heavy computational problems, like Google showed they could do in less than 3 minutes, what it would take 10 million years for a standard computer to do, those sorts of problems. Understand what that is. Understand your environment in the intricacy. Start looking at upgrading and how you might want to upgrade your cybersecurity, because we've been relying on RSA and ECC since the late 70s. Different versions, right? But it doesn't matter. We just to keep extending the key length. Well, that's going to last so long. So start looking at it now. That's what I'd recommend. QSecure certainly be happy to talk anytime with the audience.
Well, thank you so much, Skip. And I know that we're going to definitely have audience members that are going to be very interested in this. So I really appreciate the time you took to come by and talk to us.
Absolutely, Alex. Thanks for having me on the show, and best of luck, and great to meet you. Finally got a chance to meet. When you make it out to Silicon Valley, come say hello.
I will, Skip. Thanks.